session 3, the topic quote is, well, maybe, but you certainly don't look like an economist. Well, I mean, to the contrary. I look just like an economist. I don't want to spoil their presentation, but Andrew and Sarah's presentation, there is a hand-drawn picture of an economist.
It's not attractive.
To be honest, so that's a worry, because when I looked through that presentation, I looked at that and thought, if I were to do a self-portrait, that would be me. So anyway, despite being probably the least appropriate chair imaginable for this session on diversity, we have got 3 fantastic speakers. So without further ado, let me pass across to Andrew and to Sarah to present on this stuff.
Thank you. Right. Right, so we've heard, so my name's Sarah Smith. I'm Head of Economics at the University of Bristol. I'm also Chair of the Royal Economic Society Women's Committee and co-chair with Aaron Advani of a new campaign, Discover Economics, which is aiming to promote economics and information opportunities to find out about economics to 15 to 17-year-olds. And you'll hear a bit more about why this is so important during the course of the presentation. So CORE has clearly transformed the way economics is taught in universities. It offers an economics that's relevant and exciting and talks about economics in a way that's meaningful to people. It talks about the issues that students really care about. One ambition was to make economics more diverse and to broaden economics' appeal. And I think if we present a more diverse image of economics, then it will appeal to a more diverse set of students. But the lack of diversity in economics is so severe that we can't wait for this to happen organically. So 28% of economics students currently are women. That's kind of among students studying economics at university. And we know that the picture among economics A-level students is quite similar. And also, both in university and A-level students, private schools are overrepresented. So we have a pipeline of future economists who are basically male and sort of more privately educated than the typical university student. So to paraphrase a well-known phrase from the Field of Dreams, it may be that if we build a core digital platform, then she will come. But I think we kind of need to do a bit more, and we need much more actively to promote economics to a more diverse audience, and we can do that, I think, using CORE. So at the moment, economics has a real image problem. So, you know, CORE presents an image of economics which is engaging, diverse, it speaks to the issues that students care about. But if you ask 15 to 17-year-olds what they think economics is about, they'll basically tell you it's about money, it's about finance, it's about banking. So the way the students who are making choices about economics perceive economics really lags behind that kind of core vision, and actually, you know, about the subject that I think we would sort of hold to our hearts as economics. You know, I don't think anyone in this room would think that that's what economics is about, but clearly there's a massive failure to communicate to a bunch of students who are making really important choices about what they're going to do. So at the moment, economics still has an image problem among students. I think Andrew's going to talk a bit about some of the economics teaching in schools, which faces sort of structural problems. So that's why we launched Discover Economics. You know, to try and communicate the values of CORE, the content of CORE to students who are making choices, and sort of to tell them that economics is about the type of issues that CORE talks about and is about the issues that they care about. So that's sort of like motivating what we're going to talk about. Does that work? No, let's do that one. Right, okay, so we're going to talk about 3 things. We're going to talk about what we are doing, so what we being kind of like Discover Economics, the campaign, also Bristol University. So Bristol University is a sort of like a concentration of economics problems. You know, Bristol is well known for sort of having a higher than average share of privately educated students. And, you know, we have 25% women. So, you know, clearly so at Bristol, we really needed to do something. So we started doing things which sort of motivated this campaign. So we're going to talk about what we're doing at Bristol, what we're doing about the campaign. Andrew's going to talk about a little bit about what he's been doing as a very active member of the CORE team, reaching out to schools. So we're going to talk about what we're doing, not in any sense kind of to tell you that we've solved the problem. We're going to talk about what we're doing to highlight the sorts of things that we believe are possible, to highlight the sorts of things that we think are necessary, and hopefully to inspire you, and if you've got deep pockets, to inspire you to give us some funding. Because what this really needs is kind of scaling up. You know, we can do this sort of individually, but actually I think this type of outreach is so important to the future economics that actually we need to kind of do this at scale. So we want to, as I said, we want to inspire and motivate you either to do this type of engagement or to fund this type of engagement. So we'll talk about what we've been doing and then go back over a bit about why this matters, so the image problem, the structural problems in the school, and then looking ahead to a bit of a vision, I think. Right. We're kind of doing
so we're going to tag team indeed. I'm Andrew Sykes. I'm head of sixth form at St Paul's School, a private school who obviously benefits from good resources and a very, very active, interested student body who really enjoy their economics. But I'm equally passionate about extending those benefits and the way in which you can enjoy economics to other schools as well. So both through CORE, and CORE has been a great vehicle to do this, we've been looking at additional ways we can leverage our position and CORE's position to help us achieve that. So first thing to flag with you is the video competition and how we've been using a video competition as a means of extending students' excitement in the subject of economics. For this, we got our inspiration from the UCL Economics Challenge, first year Economics Challenge. That in itself draws on CORE, but what we thought is what we could do is take some of the very exciting chapters of CORE, get students to engage much more deeply in the economics than they may have engaged with their A-level studies, and start to really produce something that's interesting and that other people want to see and benefit from as well. And following on the themes of communication, how do you communicate? Well, how you communicate effectively through a video is a great challenge for students, but also a great means of showing the skills. So what did we choose as themes? Our first theme was inequality, and we linked them straight to Chapter 1 of CORE and gave them the ability to look at that and to look at some of the data, put inequality in a global context, and then open it entirely up to them in how they then interpreted the topic. Brilliant videos, absolutely brilliant videos from around the world from the very beginning. Second theme we took was the global financial crisis, GFC 10 years on, and again linked them directly to the chapter of CORE, but enabled them to make their own choices in how they put across that information. Final theme this year was climate change, and you can see the page that we had in the CORE website to encourage schools to enter that. Again, great participation from schools across the world. Luca and the CORE team tell me that we extended for countries participating included South Korea, US, France, Germany, and of course the UK. So huge global participation, and from many types of schools, not just independent schools. But we saw in this also the opportunity to try and create a partnership event where you would get schools to partner up together, so a state school to partner up with an independent school, and to leverage off the resources of one school with another to draw on the advantages and the skill sets that each of those schools had. So for the last 2 years, we've been holding a partnership competition, separately judged, but the quality of the winning entries has just been quite superb, I think. And so I hesitate to say it with UCL people here, but I think the winning entries in those competitions were at least as good as the winning entries in the UCL First Year Economics Challenge. They were that good. It's not that the UCL ones weren't good. They were that good. And I do recommend you look at them, click on the CORE website and look at some of those entries. Equally important, though, I think, are the skills of working together and learning from each other. I spoke to the team. We basically said to the team, you go off and do this. There's a team over at Hammersmith Academy, one of our partner schools. There's you two. You're going to go over there, you're going to work with them, you're going to learn lots of skills in doing that. We'll set aside the time for you to do it, off you go. They said the same thing, Hammersmith Academy, to their students. Off they went, they worked on it. I said to them after, so what did you learn? They said, that was really tough. The team building skills, working together, scheduling it, getting people to do the different things together, teaching them the economics as they'd been taught it, but also learning from them. And I read the Hammersmith Academy magazine, which had a big feature on this, and it said, we had to take the ideas of our partner school. They were very professional boys, but their ideas needed to be brought to life. So they haven't read that yet, but I just thought, wow, that is really interesting. They gained so much from it as well. And if I was in any doubt about that, I was walking out of the school with the head of Hammersmith Academy. He said, you do realize that competition really changed those people's aspirations and focus, and it made them think, we can do this and we can achieve much more, which actually blew me away because he totally unprompted, he said that. So that's one area where we've been doing things on this. Another area is to create teaching and learning resources for schools. So CORE clearly is aimed at an undergraduate audience. But from the start, Wendy kindly involved me in elements of the project from the very beginning. And from the start, we'd seen, look, there is overlap here with the A-level. Some of us are frustrated with the A-level. It's not demanding enough. It's not analytical enough. There's not enough stretch and challenge. We've now got the ideal vehicle here to be able to stretch our students, inspire them much more about the subject, get them to be keen future economists. So we have, within our own school, we've built up lots of resources that we use, both for holiday work and stretch and challenge work and normal teaching. But what we thought is it'd be good to be able to extend some of those resources more broadly. So teaming up with the FT, we've created some teaching and learning resources where there is an FT article. We've chosen FT articles that are linked to chapters of the core. And then we have questions that are styled along the lines of A-level questions. And a teacher in search of an inspiring topic for a particular day can click on, find the FT article. Many interesting articles there, areas ranging from, I just clicked on a few last night, game theory and sports doping, to Uber's practices and their effects on labour market behaviour. You can click on those articles, you can see the link to CORE, so you can then say, okay, let's read some more about game theory, read some more about more advanced applications in the labour market, and here's some questions I can set for my class. So really, really great resources that are there. The other thing, just to flag from this slide as well, we run partnership Oxbridge classes. I'm sure many other independent schools do that as well. But Oxbridge and university, leading university classes, they're not just there for people applying for Oxbridge. And we use CORE as one of the main sources that we can use to help stretch students there. For the more mathematically inclined, we've then got the Leibniz supplements, which are accessible to a A-level audience, definitely accessible to an A-level audience, provided they've got a bit of maths grounding. Sarah, you can...
Yes, okay, so I want to talk a little bit about some of the events. So we started doing a Discover Economics event at Bristol with the aim of inviting school students along to, and the college students along to discover economics, find out what economics is about through a series of interactive games and challenges, and meet economist panels. So I think, you know, as I said, there's this very narrow perception of what economics is about, but yet, you know, I mean, CORE is really showing how, you know, presenting economics as a toolbox to solve real-world problems just brings it to life and gives students material that they really engage with. So the idea behind all these events is to talk to students about economics in a meaningful way, to make them see the diversity of real-world issues that economics sort of deals with, and makes economics seem much more accessible and a gateway to a range of interesting, exciting careers. So we did this at Bristol, so we now have about 200 students from 10 different schools coming to our event at Bristol. The Royal Economic Society put up some funding, so it sort of offered to universities small amounts of funding so that they could do similar things. So over the last calendar year, I think 10 events with about 500 students from about 50 different schools taking place around the country, all with this idea of allowing students who don't necessarily study it at school or have a very narrow perception of what it's about to find out what the subject is about. It's sort of bringing CORE and its philosophy to a set of students who don't necessarily know what economics is about, or don't even think about studying it because it's not available in their school. So that's what we've been doing. And then finally, you can bring students to an event, but obviously, that's not always possible for all schools. There are real challenges in sort of reaching out to schools and getting them to bring their students to events. So we thought, well, let's try and take some of the, the core curriculum into schools. So, Bristol, it was, I think, one of the first universities to sort of roll out core beyond kind of its initiators. We're excited to have it as part of our curriculum. And we're using the curriculum to develop almost sort of taster sessions to be delivered by our students in schools and we kind of thought about this. Obviously, we could send economics students to talk to economics A-level students, but we know that economics isn't taught in all schools. So we're actually taking the core material and thinking about how it aligns with the maths curriculum or the business studies curriculum or the PHSE curriculum, so that we can offer to schools the opportunity to have an economics ambassador come and sort of teach curriculum relevant material and then introduce economics sort of in the context of a maths lesson or a business lesson or a PHSE lesson. So we've had some preliminary sessions with the students. We're sort of developing, and I think rolling out the first student ambassadors next week. I think some of my colleagues don't think they're quite ready, but we'll we'll have to sort of see. And the idea, I think the idea would be to then put all the material online so that other universities could take the material, having learned what works and what doesn't work, and hopefully do something differently. And if someone would give us the funding, we'd even put on, we'd be very happy to deliver training. The Economics Network trains people how to teach. It could also train students how to deliver these sessions. So I think we kind of know a little bit about what works, and we're very keen. I think this is absolutely essential. Which I just put all these up. So yeah, I think Andrew and I we were doing this almost in parallel. I think both keen to sort of engage students in economics in the kind of in the core sense of kind of economics as a tool to address real world issues. The feedback from students is always really positive. It's absolutely great when you talk to students in this way, 15 to 17-year-olds. And so Matthew, the guy with the Nike swoop, he literally changed his UCAS application on the day he attended our workshop. He wasn't going to do economics. He came to our workshop. He applied to do economics at Bristol. So that was great. From an economics point of view, I don't care. He comes to Bristol. I just want him to choose economics. But you can see this stuff works when you talk to students about economics in a way that makes economics relevant to them. It has a really powerful effect, and I think we need to do more of it. So why do we need to do this? Yes, you do that.
So this is from a school's perspective. This just stress I'll put the quotes on later, but from a school's perspective, this is just such a critical issue. It just strikes me as a really, really odd position for economics from a school perspective. And I know we've got quite a few teachers in the room as well, but it should be a really golden age for economics at school. You've got demand for the subject really, really booming. People are really interested and keen to study economics. There's schools that aren't supplying economics at the moment that actually really want to do it. And sadly, we also find there's schools that try and do it and then have to close the department. Why do they have to close the department? Because the supply of qualified economics teachers is just not there. And it's just a massive tragedy from my perspective. Here are a few, that's just a fact. Economics departments are closing, class sizes are rising. And some of these teachers in state schools tell me about this quite regularly. I can think of the school where I did my own teacher training, and class sizes 12 10 years ago. How big are they now? 25 for exactly the same subject. And if you are a teacher who's then gone from teaching 12, most of my classes are 12 to 13. If you're suddenly teaching 25 to 30 people, that's a massive challenge, and it changes the way in which you can teach. Certainly it changes the way in which you can teach A-level. And of course it's going to become, if we're not careful, going to become a self-reinforcing circle, because you may then not be incentivized to work as an economics teacher at that point. So that's another quote. This is actually a quote from an independent school. So this isn't just state schools that are affected. This is quite a big independent school who basically said, I'm going to shift to lecturing because I can't get a decent trained economics teacher. Another quote, just an email that came through to our inbox, asked to come out of retirement to deal with the economics teaching crisis. Can you help me? So just asking our school to help provide resources and guidance on what could be done. So big headwinds in that respect. The CPD point there is just worth reflecting as well. We did deliver CPD through our school. My own colleague will deliver classes. And after I was reading the feedback, after a session I'd done on a lack of high quality CPD, and it wasn't fortunately directed at the session I'd delivered. It was, in fact, to be self-promoting, this makes a big change from most of the CPD that we go to, which just lacks quality. Why does it lack quality? Because it's focused on getting the grades, just getting the A-level grades, which had become too much of a tick box exercise. What did we do instead? Well, we did a mixture of that, because we can do that, but we also added in core-based exercises, so a series of core-based exercises that we delivered and which they could deliver as well in schools, and various comments along the lines of, you've reignited my enthusiasm for economics as an economics teacher. Shows that we can sort of move on. And other subjects do this. We definitely see this in other subjects.
Okay, so I think this is, so, combined with the problem of teaching economics and the availability of economic schools is this economics image problem. So the pictures at the top are images of economics. If you ask 15 to 17-year-olds and you ask Google what an economist looks like, and it's pretty much the same. It's a man in a suit with a tie thinking about money. And that, so we are really going to struggle to appeal to diverse students if that's what people think an economist is. It's just people want to have images that they can relate to. That is not an image that a diverse population relates to. So that's creating this pipeline problem. So I mentioned it before. So 1 in 4 boys at all boys schools take economics. It's hugely popular in all boys schools. 1 in 17 girls take economics. So you can just, that's the future supply of economists in this country, unless we try and do something to communicate its diversity more successfully. So what can we do? So, I think we've got an idea of what works. We really need to do outreach if we're to change the sort of future of the discipline, and I think we need to in order to make it continued engaging and relevant. And I think core plays a huge role, but unless you communicate the values of core to 15 to 17-year-olds, unfortunately they'll never make it to our universities to learn that curriculum. So I think that's the missing piece of the puzzle, and looking at Nuffield Foundation, maybe that's the next thing we really need to focus on. So, I think we have an idea of what we need to do. I think we can imagine successful partnerships between schools and universities. I think, people in universities and sort of really beacon schools could support teachers in other schools who are struggling with the lack of supply of economics teachers and the lack of resource. And I think universities have a big role to play in terms of, outreach, both in terms of the academic staff and students. And I think we can use core material to kind of engage students and to provide the support to kind of teachers within schools. So, I think there's huge potential to use this material to, engage a new audience in economics. I think, it's a really exciting thing to look forward to in terms of tackling these challenges.
Great, Sarah, Andrew, thank you. Extremely interesting and responding. Rohan's CEO of Think Smart Careers.
Thank you. Actually, I'd like to start off where nearly where Sarah finished around perceptions. So those images are really, really interesting, and seeing is believing. So a quick plug for Think Smart. I'm founder of Think Smart, thinksmart.careers. Please check us out. We crowdsource problem-solving situations from people in different jobs. So whether you're a venture capitalist, a midwife, a bricklayer, a lawyer, if you don't have access to those careers, how do you know what they're about? So real-world professionals in a Wikipedia kind of style method submit problems to us, you solve them, and you figure out more about your career path. Now that's crucial because actually when I've done some customer testing in the last week, I've been speaking to A-level students. What are the barriers to studying A-levels? One of the big ones is because money, finance, trading, which naturally is a reason I actually chose it, and it was a big failure. these kind of issues need to be open. Whether you're a lawyer or a venture capitalist or whatever, a startup founder, you use basic economic principles. So I think that's a really, really important statement to make up front. A little bit about my journey. So I started economics in year 8, which was quite a random time to start. I did it throughout high school through to year 13. Pretty much enjoyed it. After my first year at university, Aaron in the crowd will tell you, I tried switching to French and German because I was introduced to the concept of a matrix. I thought it was a film. I was very, very poor, but I persevered. And actually, interestingly, as my option pool got wider, I did things like development economics. I also co-founded another startup. So 10 years later, something I learned about microfinance and groups of villagers kind of borrowing to maybe improve their outcomes by pooling incomes and so on, we have hopefully going to get approval to launch a lender that's a group mortgage provider. So if you're 3 or 4 groups of mates on a grad scheme and you live in Clapham and you're paying quite a lot of rent, why not use proxies for trust and so on to look at pooling your incomes to get on the housing ladder? Now, actually, we then employed a couple of the professors who taught us a lot of the theory and now running the econometrics models and using this kind of thing within a startup. So again, it's really important to make sure real-world problems are linked to how the economics profession teaches and reality on the ground. So that's kind of an initial intro. And during my customer testing of A-level students, like any good ex-management consultant, I came up with 3 bits of feedback. So I've mentioned around kind of perceptions and it being really important to show that essentially I think studying economics is a derived demand for the career you go into. Clearly some will become economists, but the vast majority won't. And so showing that actually if you're a lawyer, game theory and negotiation is just as important as kind of using quant finance models on a trade floor is absolutely crucial. A second point is around the syllabus. So this is an open question, should certain things be mandated? So I still do a little bit of A-level economics tutoring, and it kind of amuses me that it's not changed since I did it, and I'm sure it's not changed for a long time. So do you mandate for every principle on the syllabus, there must be 2 or 3 real-world applications of it? Do you stream or modularize or put into modules A-level economics? So you use core principles, but you can take them down a development track, a public track, or if you really like maths, and it shouldn't be a bad thing either, is you take it down a quant track. Do you also make the exam reflect that? So at university, I think we could choose 4 from 10 questions. Do you allow that to allow students to kind of really apply things into areas they're interested in? And again, I think that will give less of a narrow focus. So I think that kind of on perception, on the syllabus, there's some kind of ideas, some feedback students gave. It's really important. I spoke to a friend of mine I studied with who was on free school meals. And I said, what does economics mean to you? And he said, for me, it's how do you use it to create a business that can potentially push you out of the socioeconomic class you were from. And then I spoke to some friends from business school who are in a very different socioeconomic class and talked about how economics should think about business for good, impact of society, climate change. Well, actually, the two are both relevant, but they need to kind of speak to each other and learn why each other are motivated to study economics for those reasons. And then the final thing I'd say is about access. So, again, Aaron and I were discussing, not everybody, you don't study medicine until you're an undergraduate. Same for engineering, I think. But a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to take the risk with economics. I've never done it before. Why should I do it for A-level? So if there's ways in which economics is used every day, and labelling is important. I don't know if people watch How to Get Away with Murder on Netflix, but if you relabel things like how to get a pay rise, how to increase your pocket money, these things can be used at primary school to encourage students to learn about economics. On the supply side, teaching, I think, is a really good point. I'm a governor at an FE college, and we have a huge shortage of construction and engineering teachers. Again, they can earn much better money in practice. Often they'll only look at the industry later. Could you come up with some sort of teach first for economics? Could you ask practitioners to teach modules so you partner with corporates? I mean, I'd love to teach certain modules, some way out of my expertise, but others may be interesting to do. And I think making the supply side more flexible, which is what is taught to A-level students, is a really good idea in terms of getting that broad scope. So there are a few comments and observations, but I'll hand over for questions and so on.
Terrific. Now, I think we do have time, just about, we haven't really, but I'm going to take 2 questions anyway. And we'll go Tim and then up the top.
Thank you. Tim Harford. Implicit in a lot of what Andrew and Sarah was saying was that if we want to make economics more appealing and attract a more diverse group of people into economics, that starts with the A-level. I mean, it could potentially start with the GCSE or primary school, as Rowan said. It could also potentially start later. I know one unfortunate soul who didn't study economics at A-level, went to university planning to drop economics and study philosophy, and in the end suddenly ended up writing about economics for the Financial Times. So it's possible to have your Damascene conversion quite late. I just wondered, is there a moment where we need to be intervening, or is it just all along the educational spectrum?
So, I mean, the reason saying 15 to 17-year-olds, it's not necessarily to get them all to study A-level economics, because A-level economics isn't available in all schools. 15 to 17 is the moment at which people take key decisions which are going to influence the future direction of their careers. So that's why we're targeted on that group. I mean, there are many conversations about how it's really important to incorporate financial and economic literacy into the curriculum from primary school, but that's a bit beyond my time budget, you know. So the reason why the campaign is focused like this is because that's the way I think we might make progress at a point when many people are making decisions. So of course there are going to be people who come to economics later, and I don't know if Ali's probably gone, but Economy do a fantastic job in designing economic content and discussion materials for people who are adults. You know, you're never too late to learn economics, of course, and you know, it would be great to sort of think cradle to grave, you know, economics education. But this campaign is really about targeting people at a critical moment when they're making decisions in order to achieve the most impact possible.
But maybe the signposting, so I agree entirely with Sarah, but maybe the signposting of what is economics could be done more clearly throughout the education spectrum. My wife's deputy head of a primary school, and I was discussing with her, I said, well, philosophy, we now have philosophy for children in primary school education. It's quite an important, quite a big topic, quite successful as well. I said, why couldn't we do economics? She said, well, we already do economics. I said, oh, go on then, tell me. She said, well, they set up a bank. So they've immediately got that message of what a bank is, and yeah, fine, but they think that's economics, and the teachers think that's economics as well, which has immediately started the wrong language that we're concerned about.
Look forward to regulating that bank. Question top.
Hi. So thanks for that. So this panel is about like the lack of diversity in economics, right, and the audience for it. So I wanted to ask if, to what extent do we know the scale of the lack of diversity in economics in terms of quantitative figures, and how we're measuring that so that we know that these programs and initiatives are actually improving engagement amongst a diverse issue, because we know the numbers in terms of gender, but we haven't explored topics like race, social, economic background. So I'm just wondering what initiatives.
The figures we were looking at are from HESA. So they provide certain demographic backgrounds. It's clear there's an underrepresentation in gender. In ethnic minority terms, and actually economics doesn't do too badly. There's quite a high share of ethnic minority students. What's lacking is a detailed breakdown according to specific groups. And of course, you'd also worry about, sort of the intersection of race and class. And we also know, so HESA doesn't provide the state-private background, but we know from some other work we've done just about the offering of economics as an A-level to students from different backgrounds. So for example, private all-boys schools, it's about 95% get economics A-level. State further education colleges, it's about 45% get the opportunity to study economics A-level. Grammar schools, single-sex grammar schools, it's 80% of boys and 50% of girls get the opportunity to study economics. So there's sort of, there's partial statistics. We don't have the level of detail we want. I mean, the gender is the most striking underrepresentation if you look at the aggregate statistics, but it's pretty clear who's coming through from economics degrees, that it's sort of gender and I think sort of socioeconomic background that are sort of the problem, and then the intersection of race and socioeconomic background and gender and socioeconomic background.
Andrew, Ryan, any quick points, Ryan?
Now, I can only talk more from a kind of lived experience perspective. The statistics show that, but I think if I think about the world of work, you can see it through role models. I think for particular groups in society, there's just a complete absence. So I've kind of worked in as a trainee economist, as a management consultant, then in the startup world. The same groups that are underrepresented in economics are still underrepresented in every career path that I've worked in.
Fantastic. So please join me in thanking Andrew, Sarah and Ray.